Well, good evening and welcome, one and all. Thank you for connecting with us tonight. It's great to connect with you again and have you coming into the session with us. I have some awesome guests tonight who we are going to be chatting to. And the subject we want to be talking about tonight is the subject of change. And I know that every one of us at some point in our lives or the other, or even right now, are going through some form of change. The world has certainly changed all around us. And so this is something that I know that we can all connect with. I'm going to invite Pastor Adrian Jacobs and then Gabriel Pulley to come into session with me tonight and just say hello to everybody. They can give you a wave so that you can see them waving at you. Two handsome gentlemen. I have been through about 5 weeks of having females in a session with us and having a conversation. I'm very happy tonight just to have some gentlemen in the room with me. Good looking gents at that. Welcome. And I hope that we're going to have a fun time in conversation tonight. So everybody that's connected online, please feel free to share and to encourage others to connect tonight as we discuss the subject of change. And I'm going to ask the gentlemen to unmute themselves. We're going to get to know them a little bit. I've already mentioned their names to you, but everybody knows your name in this session, Gabriel and Adrian. So we don't want to know about your name. We've seen your faces before, and we can see it tonight. So what I would love to do is throw some surprise questions in your direction instead, so that the people get to know a little bit more about who you are. And let me say welcome to Chantel from the Netherlands that's connecting with us tonight. Anybody else that's online with us, go ahead, give us a wave. Justin, I think you might have a fan. I see somebody named Jody that's in the session with us tonight. Babu, welcome to you. I'm getting multiple links coming in from the Netherlands, so I don't know what's going on there. It must be the connectivity or the airwaves. Everybody else, just give us a wave, give us a thumbs up, drop something in the comment. In fact, let us know what has been your experience of change, the best experience of change, the worst experience of change that you've had in your life. But back to my guests in the room tonight. Here's how this works, guys. I have 10 questions in front of me. You don't know what any of those 10 questions have to ask. You don't have to answer all 10 of them. All you get to do is you get to pick a number between numbers 1 through to 10. And because there's only 2 of you in session with me tonight, I'm going to allow you at least 2 questions each. If it feels too mild, then I'll throw in just a question of my own by choice. But to start us off, because Adrian, you are a pastor, we will be kind to you and let you go first tonight. How's that, Gabriel? I think you'll agree with me there. So from numbers 1 through to 10, Adrian, which question would you pick tonight?
Give me number 10.
Number 10. If you were a superhero, which one would you be?
Tricky question, because I've probably got definitions and answers and motivations for each one that I'm thinking about right now. Okay. I've always loved Batman, just for the gadgets, the fact that Bruce Wayne is a billionaire, all of those things that goes with it, and just that iconic line where he just says, "I'm Batman." That's just awesome. So Batman.
Well, if Nolan is watching tonight, you're going to get like 10 thumbs ups and likes on that one because he's a big Batman fan. So welcome, Batman. We know who we're dealing with tonight. Over to you, Gabriel, from questions 1 through 9. Which one would you select?
I'll pick lucky number 7.
Lucky number 7. What not what your favorite movie was. Okay, the question is, what random thought would you like to share with us today? Something that annoyed you in the week or you thought was a pearl of wisdom? Anything you would like to just kind of like, for lack of a better word, spew at us tonight. Get it off your mind, off your chest. What's been messing with you?
Well, I think I've been driving to Pretoria this whole week from Johannesburg. So
yeah,
traffic has been a real pain, a real annoyance to me this week.
so traffic is an annoyance.
Yeah, but it's been teaching me patience. Seeing as we're in a Christian forum.
Well, we'd like to go outside of the box tonight, so the honesty will be accepted. And if you're hitting traffic, it's amazing then. The world is clearly not in the full COVID state that it used to be if traffic is something that you're experiencing. Adrian, go for it. You have except number 7 and 10. You have 5. All the numbers available. Question number 5. Let us in on something that's on your bucket list, sir. You have chosen the best of questions tonight, I tell you.
Let me just say, I'm not sure if I can tell the whole story, but we were in Egypt, and I said to Janine, you know that we've seen, I think, 4 or 5 of the 7 wonders of the world now. And
Okay.
we were sitting in the bus, and I said the next one. So we went to Google because the bus had Wi-Fi. So we Googled, and I said the next one we need to see is Christ the Redeemer. A month later, we went to go see Christ the Redeemer. So bucket list is to complete that 7 wonders. Janine has seen the Great Wall of China. I would love to walk on the Great Wall of China. That's one of my bucket lists. On my bucket list.
All right. Well, tomorrow morning you can start from your rooftop. I mean, you believe in faith, right? But that's fantastic. The fact that you've mentioned some and actually gone out and have the privilege or the opportunity to see them. I am just intrigued. The buses in Egypt have Wi-Fi.
Yes.
That's just quite something for us to know. I don't know.
It's the tourist buses,
Okay, that explains it.
So yeah, they had Wi-Fi and all of the yes.
Here's a question for the public that are online with us. What do we have on our buses at the moment in South Africa if you do travel by bus? I want to say welcome tonight to Leader Thomas. Pastor Leader Thomas is connecting with us, I think, from Dubai. Dorothy says good evening to us, and Mamela says hey, all of her favorites are in one session. And I'm going to take claim that means me too. So yeah, so you have a fan club that's looking forward to tonight's session. Last one for you tonight, Gabriel. 5, 7, and 10 have been chosen. Gamble your next number. Bad thing for us to be saying. Number 1. Number 1 is Too Easy. Your favorite movie?
My favorite movie. Yes, it's a franchise of movies. Even though of late I've been getting a bit irritated with the lack of realism, but it's the Fast and Furious series of movies. I have to say is my favorite one, except the last one. I just couldn't deal.
Men will be boys. That's it. That I think is clearly something that we can take away from that. Men will be boys. Well, as I mentioned earlier, speaking about men becoming boys, that in itself is a mega change of life, and change is the subject of our conversation for tonight. So I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, tonight, what is some of the change that you've experienced in your personal space that may have been one of the most challenging things, the most challenging phases of change or experiences of change that you have had to go through? Seeing as we started with Adrian on the questions, Gabriel, we can give you a chance to go first on this one.
I think the 2 major changes in my life. I think the first one was getting married. I think that was the first big experience of change in my life. It's suddenly having 2 families, twice the events to go to, twice your weekends get split. It's also managing almost 2 personalities and the interests of those 2 personalities. And then I think the second biggest change, and I'm definitely the biggest change in my life, was having my boys and having children and managing, all of the mechanics around having children. And the thing with children is each year or each phase in their life is a change in itself. So
of change in our lives. Very interesting to have boys. But Adrian, anything else on your side of your world, sir?
Well, allow me just to say thank you to you, Pastor Rennell, for being on this platform, and as well to Gabriel, Justin, for joining us this evening, and to all of the family watching us from wherever you are. I just want to say to Gabriel that a wise man, when we were doing our premarital counseling, he said to us that marriage is a crisis. So I'm not sure if we made it through.
Well, you're here tonight.
Yeah,
we have survived thus far.
I think Pastor Rennell, for me, one of the biggest level of change in my life happened at least now in October. It will be 11 years ago. I answered the call to ministry as a young man, went through seminary, Started, in a church, as an assistant and associate pastor. Was there for about almost 3 years, almost 4 years, basically. But in the time, went into the career, sought a career, went into corporate, worked at one of the largest corporates in South Africa. And then in 2010, in October, I suffered what is a heart attack. And that was, for me, one of the most critical moments of change in my life. Because, again, it was the question of what are you seeking and what are you running after? Is it your calling or is it your career? So I thought I could do both. I thought that in my time of being in the career, I was still very active in ministry. So I called myself a bivocational minister, because I was still very active in ministry. But then the change moment came in the understanding that now you have to choose. Now you have to make sure that you commit yourself to one, spend your energy in one, spend your life in one, because you understand that even if it is a career, you spend your life in your career. So if it's a calling, you spend your life in your calling. So that was for me one of the biggest and most critical moments of change. And I must say, ever since I chose to spend my life within my calling, never since then have I had any real sense of discomfort that I made the wrong choice. There are many moments where life will discourage you, but never have I ever felt that I made the wrong choice. So I think for me, it is that change brought just a clarity, of what my life purpose is and how I want to spend my life purpose.
That's wow, very impactful. And something that you bring to the table, Pastor Adrian, is that so both the gentlemen in the room tonight with me are clearly leaders in their organizations. Gabriel hasn't referred too much to his business space, but aside from just leading in his own business space, is also a leader in terms of his industry, And so we have here, Pastor Adrian made reference to career, calling, Gabriel's in the career space as such, or the business space in terms of leadership. And we've seen much change happen organizationally. So what I think is going to be fun about tonight, and perhaps just fun because of the world that I live in and my perspective on life, is that we're getting an insight on both sides of the spectrum, where often we would see a division between ministry and business and how leadership in those two spheres work and so forth. I think my next question is going to help us to get some insight into that. Because what I want to ask you about is, how do you deal with change as leaders in your organization? And I mean, we're sort of in a little bit of a box this evening in that over the last almost 2 years, we're living in this world of a pandemic. The world didn't give us too much of time to apply change theories, if we want to call it that, or change management. So from a leadership perspective, from an organizational perspective, how did change impact you? And what was required of you as a leader in this very, very distinct time of change in human history, I think. So I hope that has been clear for you. If you have any responses for us there, how has the impact been on you, and what has been expected of you as a leader in the space of change?
Okay, I'll go first from a business point of view. I think there's been a serious impact in terms of business, in terms of sales out there. So there's been a real impact of the type of work that is available to businesses out there. And I mean, there's you spoke about the buzzwords. You need to be agile. I think the new word is pivot. You need to be able to pivot. Yeah. And I think they're buzzwords for a reason, because we find ourselves in a situation where you need to adapt to the change, and you need to find opportunity within the change. And the secret to coming out successful during this time is where I always say to my guys, where you spend your time focusing, that's where you'll succeed. So if you spend time focusing on what you've lost and what's not out there, you'll succeed in loss. But if you focus on, okay, what is the opportunity, you'll succeed in finding the opportunity. So it's about, you need to let go of the disappointments quickly and look for opportunities quickly and start focusing and pivoting to what's there. So, for example, when we started our business, we were a building services engineering company, and we did engineering in building design. And then people stopped spending money. So no one was building big buildings anymore, especially now in COVID. Everyone's trying to reduce their buildings, working from home and that sort of thing. So we had to change from a strategy of where the mindset of people was, how do I spend money, to how do I save money? And that's how we got into the energy field, because we then had to pivot and see, okay, right now the market is looking for energy reduction. So the only way you're going to get someone to spend is if there's going to be a return on that spend. And then we develop solutions in which we'd save the customer, financed solutions that saves the customer money, and the savings pay the loan on the finance. So effectively, to the bottom line of the customer, he can very easily show a saving on his cash flow. So there is an example of how we, by focusing on, okay, what does the customer need in the new sphere of business, we were able, it took time focusing and, brainstorming in our war rooms about how we're going to come up with new sales ideas. And in doing that, we came up with this idea of this financed energy solution in which we save the customer money, and the savings pay the loan, and after paying the loan still saves the customer money. And that's how we kind of had to basically be agile in the space and basically spend time focusing on how we could change and how we could adapt to what the market required at the time.
That's really interesting. And if I'm hearing you clearly, you're also saying to us the need changed, right, from who your customer was, or your customer remained who they were, but their need changed. And that can either put you under pressure to say, well, we don't deliver on that. But it sounds like instead you guys made the decision to say, well, if that's the need, then how can we go ahead and actually meet that need? What changes can we make then to become a provider in that space and in that field? Now, not everybody might have the grit to actually be able to go through that process. But one of the things you mentioned was having a war room and going back and brainstorming this. And I'm wondering how practical that can be for a lot of us in our personal lives as well. And we may be answering one or two questions that's coming through tonight just online. But we can get to those questions directly a little later. Just the element of brainstorming and having an actual war room session. Just a suggestion to some of the folks that are online to us tonight as well. If that works so incredibly well for business, and it's clearly made some mega changes for Gabriel, for instance, and the space of business that he's leading, that may be something that we can employ even in our private life spaces. We just need to get the right people on board to brainstorm the challenges with, and maybe we'll be able to find some opportunities there as well. But in the business space, it was the need of the customer that changed. And I love what you said about focus. And it seemed as though when the need changed, that could either place pressure on you or you could find the opportunity in it. And that's really a thing of interpretation, right? It's the way that you process that in your mind. It's either I'm really under pressure, I'm not going to get this business because we don't deliver on that, or hey, there's an opportunity, we can actually recreate or reinvent ourselves and respond to this in a positive way. Adrian, your take from, I'm going to say a ministry perspective, but just so that we understand, we're dealing with organizations, two entirely different organizations, but is there much difference in terms of what is required of you as a leader, what the demand becomes when you go through such a process of unexpected and a change that doesn't give you time to prepare?
Pastor Ren, and to Gabriel and to our audience, I want to say that leaders lead change. And it's important for us to understand that the two, goes hand in hand. In any organization, Yes, you'll have change consultants, and I think Gabriel was right in saying there's all these buzzwords, pivot and agile. I actually used pivot today in a conversation with somebody, So yes, we'll have all of the consultants come and lead us through change, and big organization spends, they have a big spend on change management and the implementation of change. But one of the things that I've learned across, all the years of, being involved in corporate and being involved in ministry is that at the end of the day, the biggest change agent in any organization is the leader themselves. And at the head of the leadership, whoever that senior leader may be, that executive leader may be, whoever, if it's a pastor, if it's a business leader, people look to the leadership and the leader to implement and to affect the change that is necessary. So one of the things that I found when the coronavirus and the pandemic hit us, we had to make a quick decision for ourselves. Who's going to lead this change? Is it going to be the media? Is it going to be us listening to government? Is it going to be us allowing the circumstances to overwhelm us? Or is it going to be the leadership and the leader of the church standing up and saying, this is how we're going to move forward through this? I remember through one of the early leadership engagements we had online with Dr. Jeffrey Smith, he spoke about having 3 voices, in this moment of change and adaptation. And I found that at the most, we as the leaders, we had to be those 3 voices. So again, yes, the need changed. The need changed within how we needed to connect with our people and how our people needed to connect with us, how we had to engage, with who our customers were, which is in our case, our congregants, our members, our partners. And it was, again, as Gabriel was saying, it was in his environment about saving costs, helping the customer in that way. But for us, it was about, okay, where's the spiritual, the emotional, all of the mental baggage that came with the change. And we had to showcase, as a leader myself, I had to showcase that this is how I'm going into this, moment of change, by being effective in how I led. And one of the things that I recognized that was important, going back to what Dr. Jeffrey Smith said, was to understand the voice that needed to speak in various situations. So I'm a big believer that in the moment of critical change, the leader needs to have a clear voice. The leader needs to have a clear understanding of what's happening around him or her and his people and their people. So it's not, yes, you survey the surroundings, you survey what's happening out in the world, but you must have a clear understanding. You must have a clear understanding of this is what is happening right now. And with that comes foresight that, okay, if this is what's happening right now, how do we meet this change? And it starts with leadership. So I'm going to say what I said at the beginning of this: leaders lead change. It cannot be given to the people in the congregation. Moses, learned that he needed to lead. Although he felt within himself that I couldn't speak clearly, the Lord said to him, but I will be with you. Saul, just from a leadership perspective, we understand that King Saul, the first king of Israel, we understand that due to compromise and listening to the people, Saul gave off much of his authority and his leadership responsibilities to listening to people. So leaders lead change. And it's one of the most important things that I remember before we went even into last year. Bishop Lazarus, before the first, maybe a year or two before that, he was drilling it into us, that yes, we can listen to the people and we can allow the people to lead us, or we must take the lead as leaders and lead the people to where God wants the people to be. So I'm saying all of that, Pastor, just to say it again: leaders lead change.
I think that's so profound.
You cannot
absolutely profound. There's great wisdom in that. So, leader of wisdom, right there. Thank you so much for sharing that. And to both of you, I think just your responses gives me the sort of sense that as a leader, then your mind has got to be almost constantly awake to this element of change, or to the possibility of change. And I think it's even responding one of the questions that Babu Parmans asked us tonight was that change is permanent. It's a constant thing in all spheres of life, and embracing change can be difficult. So how do we cope? And maybe Adrian may have handled that. I responded to that question in part already. My question to you is, for you personally, how do you prepare your mind? How do you keep your mind in a space where you can be ready for change? I know that right now we're in a space of change that we were not prepared for in any way, with all of the changes that COVID and the pandemic brought. But on a general basis, then, as a leader, how does a leader keep their mind in a space where they're thinking change, they're preparing for change? And is there anything that you do on a personal level that sort of takes you as a leader outside of your workspace, right? And the impact that's required of both you individuals is pretty enormous. Gabriel deals in an industry that is huge. Adrian, you pastor a church, which means the people, there are many people on the other side of your leadership and decision making. So how do you keep your mind alert? How do you keep awake to everything happening around you, and just come across as ready as you seem tonight?
Can I jump
you.
onto that one? So yeah. I'm going to say this: I don't just read the Bible.
Oh, wow. All right.
So I think Pastor Reynolds and Gabriel would probably agree. Change brings anxiety. Change brings fear. I mean, change brings a lot of negativity, and it's easy to feed into that. It's easy to allow yourself to be fed into that. I think through some point of the pandemic, I'm going to be honest, I think I said it even on Sunday while I was ministering to the church as well, is that at some point, yes, I was also anxious. I was also in a bit of despair and discouragement. But then you recognize, you recognize within yourself that, again, I have to lead. And if I'm going to lead people out of wherever this despair, discouragement, and to a new level of acceptance of where we are, and then again pivot, to something new and to a new experience, then I have to deal with my own anxieties. I have to deal with my own fears. And that is something I think that lots of leaders probably over this last year and a few months have had to deal with their own anxieties. And it's about being confident, in what you see, being confident in your own abilities. I have never questioned myself as much as I've had over this global pandemic time. Have I said the right things? Have I communicated clearly enough? Have I done enough? To at some point where we actually had to sit down and had to say, listen, you've done everything you could have done. You've now responded to this in the way, maybe there's other things you can do a little bit better, but now it's time to get over the anxiety, and now it's time to lead with clarity. So I want to say that it will always be there. And I said, I'm not only reading the Bible, because I want to say this. I'm a ferocious, not reader necessarily, but I'm ferocious in taking in information. So I'm constantly taking in information. So I read Time, I read the New York Times. I'm constantly reading New York Times. I'm on Bloomberg. Whatever comes up from a leadership perspective, you set your Twitter to certain interests. You set your reading list to certain interests. So I take in as much as what I can with regards to this specific time and season. And I try and stay ahead of things, read about things that make sense to me. Again, lots of misinformation in this moment in time, but get the right level of intake of resources to read, that can shape thinking and it can help you, move forward. So that's where I'm at. So it was first dealing with anxiety, and I know we normally say, when we make jokes and all this, and you have to pull yourself towards yourself. So I had to pull myself towards myself and say,
And hold on very tight.
and say, okay, this is where I need to go. And then taking in relevant information, that can help you see the way forward. You would know, and I'm gonna stop with this. You would know that we've said it even in one of our meetings, that the Bana and the Pew Institute doing great work within church environments, specifically in NGOs. And what they found was that what this pandemic has done is to accelerate things that was at least 5 years down the line, to accelerate it within 1 year. People that would leave, like the normal attrition within churches and membership, people that would leave like in 5 years' time, they've left within the last year and a half. So with all of that being said, we have to have responses for that. Thank you.
So, okay, I know that you're really exposing your mind to all sorts of fields, and allowing for yourself to be influenced, like you said, from the relevant sources. Interesting that you pointed out there that the anxiety, the pressure, the disappointment is something that you experience. I'm guessing that a lot of the people you lead within your organization don't always see that on your face when you walk into the room. So I am intrigued in hearing from Gabriel tonight. I know I asked you, how do you prepare your mind to be a leader that's alert, that's awake in this environment for change? But I also want to know, after it in the response is, would you say you had that experience as well, in terms of just the whole emotional, let's call it a roller coaster of experiences?
Yeah, I think Pastor Adrian summarized it so well, and I think the anxiety part is how we start. We don't start with, okay, we're going through the problem, let's fix it. We start with the anxiety, and then you start stressing, and then you start, a contract, your contracts you had now stop or get paused or get removed. And then you start getting anxiety as to how I'm going to pay the staff and, those kind of things. And then, what I found is anxiety is the thing that, unfortunately, is the thing that pushes you to spend more time with God. When we go through these times, that's the time you are on your knees praying and asking God, come through for me and that sort of thing. And I always, I find myself getting the most peace at that time. It's that time that I'm spending time in prayer, that I get this peace from God saying, I'm there with you. And it's in that time of peace, during that time, during that morning prayer when I'm asking God, I need you to come through, that I have these thoughts of, okay, so this is the situation. How are you going to solve the situation? And then in that prayer time, thinking about solutions to the situation. So definitely, anxiety is a big part of it. You go through, almost the 5 stages of depression before you start fixing the problem. But it's those stages of anxiety, I feel, that pushes you to pray and pushes you to seek God for the answer, especially when you can't find the answer. And then it links back to the reading. My business partner Praveen, he always says to our guys, readers are leaders. And you're not going to know the solution unless you are exposed. And it might not be just reading books. It's tapping into. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I download a lot of courses because I'm in an engineering field. But it's about constantly being on the learning curve, and constantly learning something, spending some time reading something or learning something or listening to something. But daily, and then when you're now faced in a position where you need to find the problem, you've got that subconsciously you've been exposed to these ideas without knowing it. And then when you start really thinking about it, and in this time of anxiety, then these ideas come, but it comes from what you've read and what you've learned. So yeah, I think.
See, you've got to be constantly investing, right? Because at some point that's going to pay out. You never know which season is going to require what response or answer, but that solution is something that you've almost packed away somewhere in the files of your mind before it was required. You know what I really love about the response that the two of you gave is that it was so non-typical. The typical world we live in, would require Adrian to say, I'm a pastor, so I pray, and that's how I cope with things. And for Gabriel to say, well, I'm the guy that just that looks for books and read what's the latest thing in my industry. But what I love about what you shared is that you began from the opposite points. you put that in different order. But I think what that brings out to us is, well, let's say firstly, everybody can relate then that change is going to bring anxiety. And I think that's a comment to our audience. Nobody is without the emotional turmoil of change. Everybody, it seems, goes through the anxiety, goes through, even like Gabriel said, 5 stages of depression, so emotions hit everybody. The thing that sets you apart is the ability to still live on beyond the emotion, right? And then what the two of you gentlemen are saying to us is what gives you the ability to go beyond that point is everything that you have done before the change impacted. So I'm guessing, in Pastor Adrian's case, it wasn't just the article he read the night of the first lockdown. It was things that he was investing into his life before that. And the same for you, Gabriel. Yes, you had to go into a war room. Yes, you had to brainstorm. But even in brainstorming, you have to pull resources from somewhere, right? And it's the storage facility of your mind. It's the courses that you've done before. It's the people you've exposed yourself to before. So I think that's really, really insightful to our audience tonight, that the seeds you're sowing on a daily basis is what is going to show up and help you on the day of mega change. Adrian's ready to tell us something there. Yes, sir.
No. Firstly, let me say I also prayed.
Confession time right here. Well, we took it for granted, sir. We took it for granted.
But let me say, Pastor Reynolds, I mean, you would attest to this. Our organization, our church, whether it is on an inter-campus level or whether it is on a campus level specific to that campus in Brakpan. I mean, every Monday when we have our staff meeting, the question is always either asked directly or indirectly. How do we get better? How do we do this better? So that was a question we've asked even before, the pandemic time. I mean, you would know, sitting in our inter-campus management meetings, that's the question we've asked many a times, directly or indirectly in our meetings. Yeah. So I think when the shift happened, I mean, we were adaptive enough, we were agile enough to say, okay, things have changed. How we communicate, our business being people having to be in the seat in front of us, connected to what we do, is how do we now use the resources at our disposal, and also how do we capacitize ourselves, stretching ourselves. I believe that this last year and a half has been a year of great stretching for everybody. We had to quickly learn things. And like you said, for some of us, we've already made those investments. So you could just pull a file from wherever the back of your mind says, oh, but I'm ready for this. I know how to do this, but I think for us, it was always been that thing of, okay, what do we do to get better at this? So I
love that question. I absolutely love that question.
So when the pandemic hit, it was, okay, no longer how do we get better at this? It was now, where's our people and how do we now engage with them at a different level? Because we've had the platforms already. It was just now engaging it at a different level, making it more effective, being efficient with our time, productive with the time that we come together. I mean, we've cut down our preaching time and ministering time at church to 25 minutes.
Let's say painfully so.
Yes, but at some point, I can't, from what I've learned over this last year and a half, I can't do it any better than that anymore. I can't go longer than that, because for me, I've learned to be succinct. I've learned to be direct. I've learned to communicate what I need to communicate in that time. And I can't stretch it further than that, because I've learned, I've adapted, I've learned from it.
It's like thinking about a 45-minute preach would make you think, well, I'm going to be exhausted if I even.
I'm going to be exhausted. Yes, I'm going to be exhausted after this. So I think it's always about that question being asked: how do we do this a little bit better? how do we get better at this? And if
Yeah.
I haven't, I'm not sure what other question you want to ask, but I would love to show that slide.
I was getting to that one just now, but I just absolutely love the statement, the question of how can we get better? And I think that is something imperative to any organization. If we are going to lead change, if leaders are going to lead change, I think that question of how can we do this better is an imperative. There should always be pre-assessment and an absolute post-assessment, whatever scenario, whatever project, whatever meeting that we're running, for us to go back and review what our activities has been. And I think that may be the golden question for tonight. If we're going to share anything with anybody out there to say, how do you prepare for change? It's asking, I believe it would be asking that question, because that question alone is going to keep you abreast of everything else that's happening in your environment. And if you're used to or accustomed to constantly changing and growing and becoming better, then even when the demand for change comes, it may not catch you off guard because you're somebody that's prepared to make a difference, to change. I was going to ask, and I think it's similar to one of the questions that maybe Mamelo was asking us online as well. I'm going to pose it a little bit differently. How do we remain true to who we are? And I don't know if you can help us out with that, Adrian, with what you were referring to earlier in terms of the slides. How do we remain true to who we are when we're going through change?
Thank you for that question. I'm just going to share this so that everybody can see it. So in my studies, over the last 2.5 years of studying and finally getting through that, even in the middle of a pandemic, one of the things that we spoke about is this concept of leadership and change. And there's 3 levels to leadership, and the question is being asked, in which area or what level are you being asked to change? On what level is being impacted, in the area of change. So at the core of it is always my competence. So what am I good at? So that's where Pastor Reynolds just said that question of how do we get better at what we do? So what am I good at? And having that ability. So in strategy, and when we set strategy, a lot of times the idea is, and I'm not sure if Gabriel can probably jump in on this, when the time permits. In strategy, it's not about for a business and for an organization. Yes, you have competitors, but it's not necessarily about what your competitors are good at. It's what am I good at? What is it that we do well? Pastor Reynolds spoke about that pre-assessment and having that assessment done of, these are my competencies, these are the skills I have, these are my valuable resources that I have. So this is what I am good at. So at the core of it is always, what am I good at? And again, we talk for a living, Pastor Reynolds and I, we talk for a living. So when the pandemic hit, what are we good at? We're good at talking, but now how do we become effective at our talking? How do we convey a message more succinctly and more effectively with more impact? So now we start looking at, okay, what are some of the things that are going to assist us and help us? So we have to step outside of, if I have a deficit in my competencies, then what do I need to start adding and need to move towards that level of change? Then the role in terms of what I do. So the question is, what am I good at and what do I do, or what I do, in terms of what is being asked of me to change within the role that I'm playing. Maybe it's within my organization, maybe it's with my family. Then the context, with whom am I doing it with? So if you want to affect change, if you want to move into an area of changes, what am I good at? What role am I supposed to play? And who am I doing it with? And listen, in many occasions, we have seen, Pastor Reynolds and Gabriel will probably also be able to note that over this 1.5 years, there's a lot of people that basically fell at the wayside, for whatever reason. And I've learned not to judge people, condemn people on whether they're disconnected, disengaged, whatever it may be. And the question is, in their context, and if for me, if people are are not moving out of their context. They're not doing it with the right people. They've got the wrong people listening to them, talking to them. They've got the wrong people sitting with them. And again, we said leaders lead change, which means that at what level am I asked to change? What level am I being asked to affect a position of change for my life and even into the organization that I'm with and I'm leading? And then just the last one, and it's quite a nice quadrant in terms of questions that need to be asked about being productive, being moral, where do I belong, and being aware. So being productive is always, am I competent? So you would rate yourself on various things. Some people would say, from a legacy perspective, our organization is high. I'm a logical person, I'm ambitious, but authority may be low. I don't necessarily want to be in leadership or have a sense of authority and role to play. So am I competent in what I'm asked to do? Am I being productive? And one of the things that I've learned over this last year and a half, that even in the midst of sheer chaos, you can still be productive. You can even enhance your competencies. I made a joke in one of the times that I ministered. I said to church, if you want to learn anything, Gabriel said to it, go to YouTube. I learned how to bake. I learned how to do various things. Because now I'm a homeowner again. So there's things that I need to know about my house. So if something breaks, I take a picture of it, I Google it. How do I fix this? Am I competent? I'm adding a little bit more to being productive. Being moral, am I a good person? What do you, as a moral person, what do you value? You value humility, honesty, hope, whatever it may be. So social order for some people may not be a high thing. Some people would say, you know what, as long as I'm just a servant to people, I'm okay. Belonging, am I worthy of love? And let me just say this, you're always worthy of love. Family, fidelity being trustworthiness, faithfulness, harmony, tradition. And I guess a lot what has happened is tradition has broken us. We have to break free from traditional things, ways and thinking when it comes to change. And then being aware around who I am or who am I. And Pastor Reynolds said earlier, that question always comes back to us. So just to go back and just say again, you have to pinpoint at what level change is being asked of you. Even within your organization, some things may be happening. So is it my competence, is it my role, or is it my context? And you then have to be able to say, okay, again, the question was, how do I get better at this? How do we get better at this? And listen, it's never going to be easy. It's not easy to change. It's not easy to affect change. It's not easy to be put in a place of change. I wanted to be very spiritual. And I wanted to say, Pastor Reynolds, earlier on already, the Bible starts with change. Because in the midst of chaos, God speaks a word of change in the midst of chaos. Okay. So that's the one spiritual feather I'm going to claim for tonight. In my cap. So
even if it doesn't pray as much as Gabriel, the pastor does know the Bible.
So I hope that helps. And
absolutely. That was really beautiful. I'm going to respond to a question here, and then Gabriel, I'm going to come to you to wrap us up in terms of what you appreciate about the changes that have been placed upon us. Because I think the change, we've spoken a lot about leadership, preparing ourselves for change and leading change and so forth. But obviously, a lot of the change we've experienced over the last year and a half, just more than that, has been a change that has been placed on us. And I'd like to hear what you appreciate about it. But a question that was asked was, how do you stay true to God in the midst of a changing world? And almost asking, sometimes you feel like you're spending more time at work because you're trying to catch up with that and feel like there's no spiritual growth in terms of your call. And Pastor Adrian, also I'm seeing here that there is a response to say, you've already answered that question for this individual to some extent. But what I want to add to that was, Pastor Adrian was talking about career and call. And I think that may be something that is distinct for an individual who is called to walk in ministry. But for all of us, there should be almost an equilibrium, I think, for that. It should almost become one in the same. What we're doing with our energy and the gifts that God has given us should be a response to a call of God. So whether Gabriel's walking in the field of business and in the industry of energy, nobody else would be able to do what he's doing with the anointing, the grace, the gifting that he has, because that's actually his call in life. And so the better he gets at doing that, the better he is getting at responding to God's call and gifting on his life. The better that a Pastor Adrian is becoming at pastoring and leading in his space, the better he is getting at responding to the call of God. And we've heard clearly tonight, doesn't matter whether you're a businessman or a pastor, both can read the word and both can pray. But Gabriel, tonight, my closing question, and we're going to have to wrap it up after this, guys, even though I think I can come to you with about 5 other questions after this conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with you tonight. I am sure that it has added value to all of those that are online. And as we approach our close, I'll just ask you, if you're online with us tonight, and if there's some lessons that you would take away from this evening session, just go ahead and capture it for us. Just drop it in the comment section, and we will pick it up from there. I'd love to hear what you have learned from tonight's session with us. But Gabriel, what do you appreciate about the change that has been placed upon us in the many months that we've had to transition through this?
I think the thing I appreciate most is what I've learned in this period. You know, we hear it preached about seasons, and we're going to go through the seasons. The Bible says a season of good and a season of bad, but we always focus on the season of good. And I don't think we've had such a period of drought as we've ever had before in our lives. You know, and it's about when I went through this period of change, I really questioned a lot of things, and I learned that, you know, these seasons happen so that you can learn, you know. So now my prayer is, when I go through a bad season, Lord, whatever you want to teach me quick, so I can get out of the season, you know. And whatever I need to learn from this thing, let me learn quick. And I see myself now get to a place where when I face challenges, my natural response is, okay, what's the solution? Whereas, you know, in the past, there was the temptation to have self-pity and pity party. But the problem with self-pity is, as long as you're in a state of self-pity, you are not focusing on how to fix the problem. You're losing time. And the longer you spend there, the longer it takes you to get out of the season. And so I think this season has really taught me how to be agile and how to really focus on the solution. I think, you know, a big thing, one of the scriptures that stuck with me was, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remaineth alone. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. And in this season, the big question I need to ask myself is, what do I need to die to? What is the thing that I need to die to, so that coming out of the season, I can produce more fruit? Because the Bible also says, you know, I am the vine and ye are the branches. And every you know, branch that doesn't produce, it prunes so that it'll produce more fruit. So these seasons we're going through, I mean, Christ in his teaching made it very clear, he's going to cut you, but he's going to cut you so that you can produce more fruit. So it's me understanding, what do I need to die to? What's the pruning for? Let me learn quick so that I can come out of the season and produce more fruit. And I think that's what I've learned in this season. It's how to recover quick.
Brilliant stuff. And I think you just emphasized again for us there that the huge trap can be in that space of emotions. When we're feeling the pressure, we're feeling that, you know, that emotional turmoil, like we spoke about earlier, getting stuck in that can be such a huge trap and just keep us from moving forward. Pastor Adrian, I could give you a minute. Anything that you would say you appreciate from this whole journey of change that we have been through?
I think I would have to compartmentalize it into various spheres. Sure. Family life. Wow. Just the fact that Janine and I could spend more time with the children, you know, and with one another as at home as a family. At first it was a small space, you know, and then we were happy, and then, you know, suddenly halfway through, you know, it's like, okay, now you're stepping on my toes, you know, so how do you navigate you know, this relationship with your loved ones, getting a little bit more patient, you know, I hope, I hope you have to ask them, get a little bit more patient in those areas, a little bit more understanding, a little bit more loving. So that's the area of family. I love what Gabriel said. Learning is always an important one for me. What else have I learned? How have I sharpened my knowledge and my competencies in certain, and capacitized myself for better and for greater? So that's one that I believe I've truly benefited from. And then from just as a pastoral leader, again, Jesus says, if you're a good shepherd, he says, then your sheep or your flock will know your voice. So I've learned, you can't speak with the same voice to all the sheep. There's need to be a different voice speaking to people, because as Gabriel said, in the seasons of their life. So I've learned there are people that I can say to, listen, no, this is what it needs to be for you and which God is calling you to. And for other people, it was more of a gentler tact and voice to speak into their lives. So it's different things. And then, just from a pure leadership perspective, it would be, like you said, Pastor Reno, don't show people you're scared. Don't let people, because they are scared, they are just as scared as you are. So it's not about faking it until you make it. It's about confidence. It's about speaking confidently, communicating clearly. It's about bringing clarity into chaos.
Absolutely. I like to say faith it until you make it. So FAITH, faith it until you make it instead. Thank you both for sharing that. To everybody that's online with us tonight, Gabriel spoke to us about when you're going through change, get your focus right as quickly as you can. Don't succumb to the pressure. Get your focus right. If you're looking for solutions, you're going to find solutions. You want to get stuck in the emotion, look at the negativity, that's all you're going to see. Pastor Adrian said to us tonight, leaders lead change. And I took away from that, you've got to always prepare your mind. So invest in your mind greatly. Whether you're praying or whether you're reading, invest in your mind greatly so that your mind is going to be ready to deal with change. And the golden question, only because I love it so much. I truly believe that if any organization is going to be great and successful, its leaders need to constantly ask the question, how can we do better? Never settle and think that you have arrived. Always ask the question, how can we do better? And I think that you can take a lot from that. I think I learned that from a book on leadership that was written by somebody in Toyota. So maybe, again, it's a book I read a while ago. And so it's just coming out of the storeroom of my mind right now as we think about that. But that really, really promoted this thought in my mind. Constantly ask, how can we get better? To everybody that's online, we pray for you. We do hope that this session of conversation has inspired you, encouraged you, motivate you, answered some questions for you, and help you to find the way forward, whatever the area of change and pressure of change has been in your world and in your life. If you need to connect with us to pray for you on a personal level, if you'd like to know more about the Lord Jesus Christ, if you'd like to connect with our churches, you'll find all of those links on our social media pages right where you are at. So please go ahead, click, get in touch with us, and we will be sure to connect with you. Gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed conversation with you, and I'm sure everybody else on the other side of the screen definitely enjoyed it tonight as well. Faith it until you make it. That's right, Mandy. Good night. God bless you all. We'll connect again next